morning and welcome to another legless conversation with Albert Munoz and Mark McLeod, again in Bertie's basement. Now today we want to discuss
Twinnies.
Predominantly a board with two. Now I know Albert has a lot of input into his boards and we're going to discuss his initial interaction with the twin fin and how it has affected his other twin fins moving forward and what bits have worked and what's been worth taking forward. So the first kind of encounter with the twin fin, what did that look like, Albert?
So the first one, I suppose, was really just this one Craig McDonald board. I'm going to show you now. The first thing is I was looking through eBay, looking for boards, trying to find something, trying to get to the understanding of what it is that boards used to be like back in the day and get that feel for it, right? And I ended up scoring this thing off eBay. Can't even remember how much I paid for it, but it wasn't very much. Anyway,
nice spray job.
Oh yeah, epic spray job. And then ended up sort of fixing it up and putting these big fins on it and just trying it out and just had a ball on it. Just had an absolute great time surfing, small gutless waves and just really getting a good feel for it. And it, I realized it's only like 5'2" or something like that. It's a really small, fat board. But I realized that when the width of it was not over the top or anything like that. Like I could still carry it, sort of put it under my arm and everything. So anyway, so I wrote that. I've written that through summers. I still take it out every once in a while and ride it, and it's great fun. Then I realized, there's other twin fins out there. There's other people that have taken that twin fin idea and just sort of pushed it a lot further. And as sort of time went on, I kept going with it, right?
So what year would you kind of place that in? Like decade, late 80s, early, mid 80s?
Early 80s, I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon this is early 80s. It's not, I don't know. I haven't actually asked Craig, but I reckon this is early 80s for sure.
Yeah.
So, but then the funny thing about this particular one is these channels, right? It's got these little channels that gave it, because I always thought of Twinnies as being something that sort of, where the tail end of it sort of wiggles around and it just sort of loosens it up, right? Which is, kind of what you would expect. But then, this kind of popped up and I sort of rode it a bit, but it still sort of hung on. So it still had a bit of a looseness to it, but it still hung on. So that was one thing, right? Next thing, this is really interesting because it's around the same time, around the same era, but a slightly different concept, right? So I just got this thing from Shane. He's moving, a couple hours down the coast and he's cleaning out his garage and he said to me, "Oh, do you want this?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" So this is your stereotypical, so it's not far off from that. It's your stereotypical sort of Friar Tuck, Brookvale Friar Tuck, late 70s, 1980, late 70s, early 80s sort of idea where, really flat rocker, really thick in the middle. But one thing that it had is it has these really thin sort of bladey rails towards the back, right?
Yep.
Remember when we were talking the last time about the fluted rails and stuff like that?
Yep.
I have this feeling that when it does that, it kind of interacts with the fin in a way that it they hum together, they sort of come together to hang on off the bottom, right? So this thing will be interesting. I can't wait to get this thing in the water. It'll
because the outline of those are very similar, but the green one has no channels. Does the Aware Knees have a fluted rail as well, or is that just a standard drop-down rail?
No, the Aware Knees actually has really thick rails.
Right, so no fluted rail.
No, nothing like that on that one at all, right? So as we kept going, remember when we go to Phillip Island for the comp, every once in a while we'd run into somebody with a strapper?
There's always someone.
So, across finding stuff on eBay, I found this one ages ago.
For those that don't know, Mick DeSapio, who shaped strappers, a Victorian from down on the west coast there,
Right.
At Torquay, Bells Beach area, big open ocean waves. Very good surfer, and his boards work really well from all what we see down there.
Yeah, very different style of thinking about the twin fin, though, right? So this thing's like 5'10". It's way too big for me, but I found this thing on eBay and just got it fixed up and tried it out, and I realized like it's a whole different feeling. It does not have the same sort of feeling of the twin fin. It's got these really turned down sort of rails, like that go really far up. This atrocious spray job that I did myself. But then the whole thing just sort of, the rails just get turned down and turned down and turned down. So you almost end up with, instead of like the fluted, like the really thin bit of rail at the back, it's almost like this entire chunk of rail is what you're using to help the fin do what it's trying to do. And so this thing, I was never able to spin it out off the bottom. No matter how hard I bottom turned it.
Big fins too, glassed in.
Yeah, very big fins. Yeah, glassed in, very strong, and sort of, they all have big fins though. That's the thing. That's kind of one of the things about Twinnies is there's always big fins there.
Yeah, and those ones on the strapper look, a couple of inches further back towards the tail easily.
A lot. Yeah, 100%.
So much back, and a much more modern outline to that board. You could put 3 fins on that wouldn't look out of place. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, this thing's probably, I don't know, early 2000s, maybe 2004, 5, thereabouts, right? Just trying to carefully balance this thing so it doesn't fall off. Blue tack. Yeah. I'm probably just going to put this down. But, so anyway, so you take those 3 things together, and you start to then play around with it, right? Start to play around with it, give it some thought. What is it that you then start to grab from one thing and patch it together with the stuff that you know, right?
Yeah.
So.
There's 3 very different boards right there behind you, like so much different ideas going on in all of those 3 boards.
And very different feel too. Like they all felt different. They all felt radically different, right? So then we start to go a little bit more sort of modern. Okay, so take all these ideas, try and slap them together into something that's a bit more familiar. So we take these really sort of crazy things that are sort of over here, and then try to patch it with something that we know a lot more, right?
Yeah.
Then this thing comes around, right? So then Parksy then shows up one day with this board for Shane. Now, it might look, this bit from here onwards just looks like one of Shane's regular boards. Yep, I'm not sure exactly what happened back here, but he just put Twinnies on it and this big swallowtail and stuff like that, and just sort of gave it to Shane. Shane really liked it in certain conditions, right? So certain places and certain times, right?
Yep.
You remember when we came back from Phillip Island, we rode this thing.
Yeah.
Rode this thing, and I had balls riding it. I didn't have to change my surfing to be able to ride it.
Yeah.
Didn't have to change. So every approach of everything I was ever doing, it was spot on, right? So all I had to do was just sort of enjoy it, because all those other points of familiarity were all there.
Yeah, you're not changing too much. It's going to feel the same under your chest. You guys, even Shane really enjoyed surfing it, I know. A lot of conditions, and he doesn't stray too far from his regular equipment generally.
No, that's right. So then we took that, and then I took that, and I'm like, okay, I know how you can, like, this one can be made better if we do, X, Y, Z, all these other few things, right? So then I took those ideas, and I sent them to Parksy, and I said, Parksy, this is what I want. Just take this, and then take some of the ideas from this, and then some of the ideas from the strapper, and then let's put it together and see how it goes, right? So he's thinking about that. And then this thing popped up in the mail. No idea what happened there. Just the confluence of many ideas all put into one, right?
Beautiful spray job there.
Oh, great spray job. Thanks to Mono for that spray job. But some concaving things going on here where there's like a big concave in the middle and then rolled rails in the end, and this tail thing, which there's a lot going on in this tail thing here.
Yeah, do you have any intel from Dave about what the thought process was with that tail? Because it's definitely a lot going on there. It's quite different.
So the idea was to marry a really pinny tail that you would normally put on a gun on a really, really big board, and then put it together with a really wide area.
Okay.
So kind of like trying to get the wide area feel with something that sort of almost anchors on and sort of grabs behind you and allows you to sort of drive really hard off the bottom and sort of be really stable.
Because it looks like almost the opposite theory to a swallowtail, taking that width to the tail and then being able to take it out. He's taken the width to the tail, taken it out, and then incorporated more length in the tail. It's quite but still got a lot of width at 6 to 8 inches back. You've still got a lot of planing surface and tail area there.
Yes, yes, it does exactly. And then it also fluted the rails on it, right? So you can kind of tell there. So this bit of the rail here is actually really, really thin.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that I wanted in this, modernized version of the twin fin, is to sort of flute the rail so you still get the thinness in the rail that you get back here. The thinness in the rail that you get back here to help the fin sort of do more of its job. And so we did that. He did that, and this thing, as an experiment, it was great fun to ride. It was great fun to ride as an experiment. But I kept feeling that this bit back here was sort of sinking, I wanted more of this tail area to be back a little bit further. It was just, look, it was an interesting experiment. It was great fun to ride. I couldn't spin it out off the bottom. Like, it was super, super stiff.
Yeah.
Like, incredibly stiff.
Foresters, when we had the session with Terry Day, and it came off the bottom so hard and just went through the back of the lip.
Yep.
And then I don't know how or what happened beyond there. I saw only the back of it, but it came off the bottom and through the waves super quick.
Yeah, I could push it as hard as I wanted to off the bottom.
Yeah.
There's no spinning out, whereas these two things, you got to kind of nurse it off the bottom a little bit. Whereas this thing, I pushed as hard as I could. It was never going to go anywhere. It was only going to project upwards. That
tail's got so many angles to refract. It's got to bite at some point.
Bites at a lot of points. Bites at a lot of points. But you know what? That's what experimentation is, right? So this is what this is all about, right? I've just been experimenting with twin fins for a little while, sort of here and there. And that one is certainly a really good experiment.
Yeah.
So then, so lessons learned here, lessons learned with the strapper, lessons learned here, lessons learned there, came to what I'm riding now. So what I'm riding now is I kind of played around with the computer on the computer file and stuff like that. Basically, just took my standard front end, the front bit of the board as standard as I possibly could, with a slightly wider than usual tail, but I still fluted those rails. See, I've got the flutes and the rails. Then sort of measured fin placements everywhere, especially the strapper. The strapper's fin placements are really good. And these ones and what it felt like, right? So I put it all together and ended up with this thing. So this thing, it's got a channel in the middle to try to mimic what the Aware Knees has going, right? So channel in the middle. The fins are really quite straight, pulled back a little bit. So this is what I've been riding for probably the last couple months.
And that's a swallowtail in the back there?
Yep, just a standard sort of swallowtail, nothing too radical going on with the tail there. But a fair bit smaller than this one. So it's a bit narrower and a bit more sort of, I suppose, subdued or conservative.
And with the rocker in that, did you flatten it out a little bit to be more like the old style twin fins, or was it similar to your normal thruster that you would ride, or is it just a hybrid between the two?
Yeah, so I try to keep it similar to the normal thruster. I try to keep, normally most of my boards have a pretty low sort of rocker. I don't like a lot of rocker on my boards. And I wanted to keep that as a point of familiarity, right? As that point of, this is what it should feel like. And so I don't want to take that bit as a point of departure. right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to keep a few things sort of sorted. And in a way, the one thing that I didn't quite grab a whole lot of ideas off of is the Steve List sort of tradition of it, right?
Yeah.
Mainly because you kind of see the Steve List thing as just a directional sort of down the line style of design, where you've got these really straight lines and these really keeled out fins.
Yeah.
It's as if the whole thing's on train tracks and you're just sort of going in one direction and that's it. Whereas I wanted more of a performer. I wanted to sort of go up and down and surf it like I would normally surf.
Yeah. And have you found possible on the new one? How's that been surfing for you?
Look, I've been having a lot of fun on it. It's more of an all-arounder rather than a grovel board, right? So I would probably classify the aware knees and the Friar Tuck as a board that you would normally ride. You'd take it out on summery, sloppy, small summery days, right?
Yeah.
You'd ride it in gutless surf that wasn't really doing very much, just so you could have a good time, feel something different. This thing's more of an all-arounder. It's been more of a board I could probably take in 6-foot waves, a board I could take in 2-3 foot waves, and it's kind of everything in between. So it's
it won't skip up.
No, I won't skip out. Actually, if anything, it's probably the fins might be set a little bit too far back, and I've been sort of playing around with different fins. Got a whole mess of different fins here that I've been playing around with. Everything from some modern take on a keel to stuff with this like pretty radical big rake. Compare that to a normal. This is a Tyler Warren.
That's a big fin. That's
a big
lot
fin.
Of surface area.
Right, as opposed to something like this, which is a lot similar to what the Friar Tuck and the Aware Knees have, right? Where you've got
older templates.
Yeah, a lot of height, not a lot of rake, and just sort of this and even the cheap version of the old MRs as well. So I've been playing around with fins quite a lot. The fins, because there's less fins, it becomes a lot more sensitive.
Yeah, definitely. I found I had an old slab I used to ride as well, and occasionally try and surf it out DY Point, and it was great if you were just going straight across sucker and you could hold a rail and you could absolutely hammer. But as soon as you came off the bottom, if you wanted to transition, turn, the back would disengage somewhat, and it would get really slippy and slidey out the top of that, And even just taking off late, because the nose is really wide on that first one. You have the Aware Knees, the widest points in front of you where you're kneeling. And I found that if you were to land flat, because the rocker was flat, they would kind of stick and you just go over the handlebars. You'd have to do well to, pull it back out. And there's so much foam. Once it kind of got stuck, it was hard to get it out of that position, which I guess is where the chine rails and all the rest of those little, nuances make such big difference.
And the points of familiarity, right? So we know the big rounded nose, the really big, thick, rounded nose works great until you get in that position.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you want something that'll be a little bit more of an all-arounder, you start to realize that, it doesn't quite work for modern day style surfing, right? Which is why most of us have much more pointed noses in all of our modern boards. So.
Yeah, it is great to have that big slab nose though, because you can just fly in with so much speed. There's so much planing area.
Yeah.
That's you really start moving in
and
there.
just sort of you'd be able to sort of plane like you sort of lean forward into a flat spot of a wave and it'll just plow right through it. Where where if you've got a more pointed nose and you lean forward, you just nose diving straight away. So. Yeah,
because you see a lot of people think, it's small, take out a twin fin, but then you see people that Torren Martin, a new exponent, and back in the 70s and 80s, they rode massive waves in twin fins and maintained perfectly. I just think because we're so used to driving off a 3-fin that you just expect that grip. With the twin fin, I think you got to learn to drive it a little bit up and down, not break that rail edge, which is where the chine would stop the breaking of that rail edge, and let the board kind of run.
Yeah, and I think in the end, what I ideally wanted to get to was a board that would sort of perform, that I would still have to surf it in the same way that I normally surf my boards. But then I could actually get it to break loose and get those rails to disengage and get the whole thing to slide a lot more on command than you would with 3 fins, right? Because that fin in the middle, that fin in the middle in there is stopping you from, is stopping that sliding process every single time, right? And so what I wanted to do is get, grip off the bottom and then grip off the top to a certain degree. And then when I was halfway through a turn thinking, yeah, it's time to slide it out, I could just sort of go, just sort of push a little bit harder and get the whole thing to slide out.
Yeah. And
to me, this is about as close as I've gotten to it. And it's, been a fun process to get there. But there's still, still a little bit of, still tiny, more small tweaks rather than big radical sort of changes as you see throughout all these boards.
Yeah, you've definitely put some energy into chasing it from 30 years of evolution there. It's quite interesting.
Oh, it's great fun too. It's great fun to experiment like that.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully people can now look at a Twinnie in a different light, and you can look back and take little things for the future.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's all great fun. It's about having fun out there. So if it becomes then a vehicle for me to have fun or surf familiar waves in a different way, then I feel like that's a win. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for sharing that, Albert. I look forward to hearing how that green one goes now that Shane surrendered it. It's up to maybe we'll have some wax on it next time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, mate. All the best.
Yeah.
Speak to you soon.
Yeah. Cheers.